Hey yogis, it's Vix. I've had an amazing question from the one and only Claire Bates, who is the one that you may have seen is in the previous two Zoom calls because we're working one-to-one a little bit about her. We're doing a case-based discussion about her client, and she seems to attract really interesting patients or clients, sorry. Here is the most recent question that Claire poses. Best things for this lady who's nervous for yoga class. I think this is to do with her group class. I'm a bit nervous as had such a bad back and neck. I've got a bulging disc in my neck and I had bilateral sciatica due to piriformis plus I've got disc degeneration. So there's quite a lot to unpack there. Um, let's start by talking about um, degeneration, discs, and all of that. So my opinions on this stuff come from a science evidence, like evidence-based modern biopsychosocial approach. So it might sound a bit weird for me to say this, but we've I think we have accidentally made people very fragile in their own minds. And where doctors, physios, osteos, chiropractors, we don't have that long with people sometimes. And so we can say stuff that will stick in their mind. When people are worried about their health, we get a little bit obsessive about, am I okay? What have I got? What's going to happen? And, do I need a scan? Do I need it? And there seems to be like a hierarchy of, in people's minds, of if something is this bad, I need that. If it's this bad, I'll need injection. If it's this bad, it's surgery. If it's this bad, it's rest. And actually, that isn't always useful because if we look at a study that I will try and find and link to this, if we look at a study that was conducted I've talked about this for years now, maybe 5, 6 years, but they did a study where they took like 1,000 people off the street who had no pain in their body, and they made sure that they had varying age groups as well. So some people in their 20s, 30s, 40s, and on all the way up to like 90s. And they took like an MRI of their spine or their body. I can't remember the detail. They definitely did do a section on like shoulders, hips, and backs and things like that. So they looked at these people that had no pain, and they found some amazing information about these people that had no pain. A massive percentage of the older age groups had severe degeneration and all sorts like prolapse discs, bulging discs. So this was kind of a groundbreaking study because what it made us realize in medicine, I guess, or in physical medicine, is that pain doesn't always correlate with damage, and damage doesn't always correlate with pain. So if I can walk around with advanced osteoarthritis in my spine, but I've never complained of any pain, then how can we tell people that are in a little bit of pain and it does come up on a scan as arthritic? How can we tell them to like stop and do nothing? Like that doesn't match. If I slice my finger with a knife and then I ask 1 million other people to slice the finger with a knife, 100% of us will feel something. Well, unless you can't feel, but let's say normal finger, 100% will feel that, and 100% will need a few days for the scab to form and all that. So when we look at that example and we compare it to the people that did this study, we think, gosh, it's not that easy then, is it? And also knowing how common things like disc bulges and degeneration of the cartilage between the synovial joints, how common that really is, helps us to realize that we don't need to be scared to deal with these people if we're therapists like osteopath, yoga therapist, yoga teacher, Pilates, whatever it is. So first of all, we know that people are not fragile, and we know that they're not fragile, and we know that movement really helps people. What I believe is the bigger problem when it comes to messages like that, this is a person terrified. I've been told by my health professionals that I should go to exercise or yoga, but I'm terrified that I'm going to pop a disc or am I going to break my back? The bigger problem is that fear. And people tend to avoid a lot of stuff when they're scared, and we all do. It's kind of like a human thing. It's kind of a protection, isn't it? If I'm really worried or scared about something, I'm just going to avoid it. So in physical injury or physical medicine, we have the fear avoidance, which I think, and I believe there's a bit of science to back me up, is a far bigger problem than somebody coming to your class, doing a move, and then going home with a sore neck or a sore back. Now, of course, if you're teaching some sort of advanced vinyasa class that had like arm balances and you're getting them to jump back, and we're not checking that we understand that person with the osteoporosis or brittle bones, if we don't understand that we shouldn't make them jump too much and impact their bones, then that's different. But general yoga classes, especially if it's like a hatha vinyasa or something like that, we can absolutely, in fact, I believe we are superbly placed to help these people. And in my honest opinion, and I think economically, this is also a very strong point, it's almost better than going to the osteopath or the physio, because not only is it a regular practice that they do, they are empowering themselves to do it, as opposed to somebody doing it for you. It's cheaper as well. So, and I do both. I run a clinic and see patients as an osteopath here in the UK, but I also teach classes. And I must say, like, some of my students in yoga have healed or at least helped and rehabbed stuff that I would normally say needs 6 to 12 treatments in the clinic, and they've done that in yoga. And of course, it's not always that easy because you need to modify or create variations for people. And in a group class, it's not that easy. So it's not easy to have a group of 20 people. 3 have got osteoporosis, 5 have got a broken back. No, that's too stressful. But it's opening up your mind to what we can actually achieve in the yoga class. Maybe it's a one-to-one or a small group class, or it's a private chat beforehand where we teach people or empower people to know their bodies and to know how to manage their injuries. Because if you haven't noticed, the sedentary lifestyle problem is much bigger than the odd person getting a bit of pain after a yoga class. And I really do mean that. Like, I really think it's so important to think about the weight of the sedentary lifestyle problem, like heart disease, physical pain, injury, arthritis, everything. Our sedentary lifestyles are causing so much more grief than somebody doing a forward fold and going, oh, my back hurts, or something like that. And that's not to say that a yoga pose done in the wrong way might not injure somebody badly. I mean, it does exist, I'm sure. I mean, I've heard of people that have been adjusted in like a Hanumanasana or split, and they've pulled the hamstring kind of off the bone. But that's really quite rare. Like, I've heard about that once in 10 years. So yeah, I really think it's important to, and I always make this my first point, because I watched a video today, and it was a doctor of physical therapy in the States, and he was claiming or saying that here are the top 3 most dangerous yoga poses. And Warrior 2 was one of them. And I was like, oh my goodness, like, I am never ever going to make people think that yoga is dangerous, because that you have completely missed the point if you think yoga is dangerous. Sitting at your desk for 8 straight hours is dangerous, far more than doing a Warrior 2. And I strongly believe, and of course this is my opinion, and I think the best advice to anybody learning from the internet is to always critically appraise. So always take everything everybody says with a pinch of salt, and go and get more opinions, and then form your own conclusion. And that's when you meet science, and you meet the fact that actually all we ever conclude is it's inconclusive. It's so hard with the human body. But it is my opinion that we shouldn't scare people to not move, and we shouldn't focus too much on how everything can be dangerous, and because we've already got enough of this, like you watch the news, like the news are completely capitalizing on fear, and it makes everybody go, ugh. And if we start scaring people to move, um, then the sedentary lifestyle problem becomes even bigger. So that's my first point on Claire's student who has those problems. So I'm a bit nervous, as I've had such a bad back and neck. I've got bulging disc in my neck, and I had bilateral sciatica due to piriformis. So that whole sentence there, for me, like the fear factor is the biggest thing. That is the worst injury she's suffering from in that sentence, is the fear. But then we do have the fact that she's got a reason to be scared, because she's probably suffered, or they, sorry, have probably suffered quite a lot with these pains. And it's very brave that they're choosing now to contact Claire and try and get some help with yoga. It means they've made a decision to actually do something about it, and they've heard that yoga's good. So yeah, after we address the fear, and what I would do, if you have the time, and of course not everybody will agree with this, but if you have the time to have a phone call with this person, or even meet up with them, you could do it outside of class at the same place, but on a different day. If it's somebody who you think like this has got a lot going on and you're not sure how to manage them, or you could ask them to come in 15 minutes before the class if you have the time. You could also write to them and start like an email or a text message conversation. I think either phone call or in person is probably best, because you can get an idea of where they're at with their fear and their movements as well. So what we need to do first with this person is also have the chat, and then second, we need to find out how serious some of those injuries were. So like I said at the beginning, bulging discs are really, really common, and in that same study they found that a massive, when I say massive, I just can't remember the figures, but a big percentage of the younger people, the 30s and the 40s, had multiple bulging discs with no pain. So we know that we know that is common, and that it doesn't necessarily mean that if she comes to class and bends the wrong way that you're popping a disc out. It doesn't exist. That doesn't exist. So in your spine, in your spinal discs, you have the fibrous cartilage on the outside of the disc. It's like a thick rubbery layer, and it's actually layered in crisscrosses. So it's layered, like there's so many different layers of it like that. So for something to come out from where my thumb is to where my middle finger is, it would have to weave through the layers, because it's kind of like that. We will go through this on an anatomy class later. And so a bulging disc means that some of the liquid material that's on the inside of that rubbery layer, so the middle part of the disc here, is like a more water-based, jelly-based substance, and it creates a wonderful, if we look at the actual reason why it's there, it creates a wonderful like pressure as the liquid presses against the outer layers, and it really relies on spinal or body movements to create that stability, just like we see in the feet when we look at the gait cycle. We create stability by moving, which in itself is mobility or movement, but it creates stability at certain phases of the gait. So the spine and the discs are the same. So for a bulging disc to happen, it usually means that liquid has taken, I don't know how long, and I think it's probably different for everybody, but it's taken time to get through those layers and get to the outside. And then the nerves, the tiny little nerve endings that are keeping an eye on that, the area just outside the disc where all the nerve roots come out, perhaps they've picked up that slight bulge or slight liquid protruding out, and they alert the brain, and the brain can either say ouch or inflame. So we need to figure out with her, because I think I often talk about the common, because 99% of us have the common thing, and then there's the 1%. So we need to figure out, I don't like bilateral either. Whenever someone says I've had bilateral sciatica, we always want to figure out is it just because they've, lifestyle wise, they've, done something to their back centrally, they've maybe had an accident, or is it because of sitting, or like what's going on there? Because we can't really just isolate the piriformis and blame it for sciatica. There's always going to be a story, or a little bit more of a story behind why they have the sciatica. One side is like so common, it's like, wow. Two sides, we want to rule out that it isn't that she hasn't got a history of something called cauda equina, which is where up in the spinal area, so from kind of L3, L2, L3, L4, L5, we've got the actual spinal cord. The actual end of the spinal cord is L1 area, T12L1, and then we have peripheral nerves that come out to go all the way down to the S sort of sacral area, and that is called the horse's tail, so equina, cauda equina, so the cord. So there can be and it's very rare, but it's very much a medical emergency. So most people hear about these once or twice during a whole career as a physio or an osteo or a chiro, but it can compress the horse's tail, leading to symptoms like incontinence or numbness around the saddle area. So whenever you either phone the doctors, or you phone maybe the emergency line, or you've had really bad back pain, 100% of the time they'll ask you, can you feel your bum? Can you feel your like genital area, your inside thigh? Have you been to the loo today? Ones or twos. Sometimes medications for pain can clog you up. I made that mistake with my cousin once. I thought she had cauda equina, but actually she'd taken codeine and it clogged her up. And they ask you these questions and they rule out cauda equina. So we want to find out with this lady, like, I'm sure that's not the case, because it wouldn't be an ongoing thing. It's a medical emergency that has to be sorted within about 6 hours or so. If it isn't sorted within that amount of time, you can have permanent incontinence, because the nerves on that horse's tail go to the bladder, the bowel, and all of that genital area. So it's really important. But the reason why I thought about this is the bilateral sciatic pain. So we would need to get a bit more history from her about that. That's what I would ask her. So tell me a bit more about your bulging discs in your neck and the ones in your or what happened in your back. Like, can you tell me what happened with the sciatica? Like, was it something you had to go and have checked? Did you have any scans, or was it just like one, in 2020 it was the left one, in 2022 it was the right one? That no longer is a problem. That no longer, for me, is that anywhere near to be a red flag. We want to find out kind of age and ability as well. Like, has she exercised much before? And can she sit on the floor? Can she bend forwards? Like, do you have, like, what makes your, if you do still get pain, what makes your neck pain and your back pain worse? Can you give me a list of things that make it worse? Like, is it first thing in the morning? Is it bending over? Is it leaning backwards? And then you can have time to process these answers, and come back to her with kind of recommendations for whether she's suitable for class. So really looking at the neck and the back for bulging discs and disc issues, the base of the neck, so the bottom of the neck, so C7, and the bottom of the lumbars, so L5, S1, those discs are the most likely to bulge. And, in the past, we always used to tell people it's to do with, like, did you lift and twist something? Did you bend over wrong? I mean, give your discs a bit more credit. They are so much stronger than that. They need years of abuse. Years of abuse. That's not to say that if you suddenly picked up a person tomorrow and twisted the wrong way, but that's more like the 10%. The 90% of unhealthy kind of, or discs that bulge a little bit, it's happened over a long period of time. There's obviously like a tiny, there's a chance that it could be like genetics, causing the disc material to not, or the outer disc to not be as strong. But that's a very small percent. What really does predispose discs to be unhealthy, smoking, drinking a lot of alcohol, and sitting all day long for work, which Most of us do the third one. We sit a lot, we work a lot, we sit, and we used to talk about like weight bearing in the spine with sitting. Oh, did you know 350% of your body weight goes through the disc when you sit? Well, we've kind of poo-pooed that one a little bit because we've realized that actually they love that kind of weight. What they actually don't like, and what is the new smoking, on top of actually smoking's bad, is sitting without moving. So we're not getting any fluid exchange. We're not causing any stress, any good stress in the spinal segments, in the joints, in the discs. That is the killer. So therefore, that's why I'm so passionate about not making people scared to move when they have an injury, because actually movement's the best thing ever. Even if you have a broken bone, after a few days a week, you want to be doing gentle. I mean, not like if it's the leg, you wouldn't be starting to walk on it just yet in certain cases. But even with the worst thing we can imagine, which is like a broken bone, movement is still going to be, and loading is still going to be the best thing. All of our tissues in our body, bones, muscles, discs, ligaments, tendons, they love load. And the reason why you're going to hear about this so much more nowadays is because we have stopped loading. We've stopped moving as much. So we're kind of seeing the repercussions now. Back in like the day, it may not have been the go-to thing to blame, because a lot of our jobs that we did were very physical and all that stuff. So of course, whenever you had a problem, we would look at like what was the physical activity you were doing to make that issue. Nowadays, it just so happens that we don't move much, so we often look at the lack of movement as kind of a causality for these injuries. So let's call her Kate for a second. So this one, Claire's going to have to tell me what her name is, but let's call her Kate. So Kate has a history of bulging discs in the neck, bilateral sciatica. She's very nervous to come to yoga. Here are kind of the steps that I would take if I wanted to vet her for my class. First of all, I would ask for a phone call, a meetup, or something like that to get some information from her. Figure out, has she tried exercise before and has it made it worse in her mind? Has she tried yoga before and has it helped or made it worse in her mind? What is the history of the discs? Did you just have that diagnosed by a physio or someone without a scan because you had maybe some tingling in the arm, or like the sciatica, you had the nerve impingement? Did it get better? Has it been reoccurring? What have people told you that means for you? So what have other professionals told her? Because quite often we have to unwrap a bunch of nocebo. Nocebo is the opposite to placebo. It's like, I've told you something that's going to make you scared to move for the rest of your life. So what have you been told by others? Because if they have a deep-rooted belief that they're not safe to move, it's going to take a heck of a lot of effort to get them to move without feeling, you can almost create pain because you're so scared it's going to hurt. Yeah, why was it bilateral? Why did it hurt why did you get bilateral both sides sciatica? Were they at the same time? Did they have to go to hospital? What happened there? And of course, I'm 99% sure she'll say it was like the left ones, then it was the right, left, right, left, right. And some people do get bilateral sciatica and it isn't called a requiner. It isn't an emergency. It is just a really, really unhappy spine or unhappy sciatic nerves on both sides. But let's find out some more info. That's what I would ask. And then I would, this person probably needs to come to a more beginner friendly class. Like I wouldn't send it to an Ashtanga class. And hopefully, I think Claire's classes are very accessible. She covers my Friday morning here in Maidstone and they always love it. So I get a real mix of like over 70s and all sorts. So yeah, once we have those answers, we can then decide what we do and how we go forwards. My main point here is disc bulges, degeneration, osteopenia, osteoarthritis, all of these big words that make everybody think that, are they safe to practice? Practicing yoga is probably the best thing for them. And we will learn more together about how to make variations and modifications that suit those injuries. But yes, usually people's fear is the biggest blocker to success, because they think that if they move, they'll break. And that's not true. We are very strong. I don't know why I wanted to pull my cheek to show you that, but we are very strong. So this is our chat today, case-based discussion without Claire, but I just thought I'd give a little chat about bulging discs and all of that. So I'll see you again soon. Thanks.